Mr. Walton, did you make contact with aliens? Were you taken to another planet, to a mothership? How they communicate with... Can you tell me what they look like? Can you tell me how many of them there were? Were you given food?
But the teachers are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
What a strange person.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
So when maybe you or somebody else creates an AGI system and you get to ask her one question, what would that question be?
What's outside the simulation?
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
Broadcasting from a shack on a hill in the mossy creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void, and I'm your host, Joe Roop. It's Thursday night, August the 6th, and tonight we have a very special guest that's going to be on the program. This is something I've been looking forward to all week. Dr. Tom Zinser is here with us, a hypnotherapist and a spiritual healer who was just on Skeptico with our friend Alex Sakaris. Very interesting story indeed, and we'll get right into that. I do real quick want to give a shout out to our patrons for making this possible. You guys really have I don't know how to explain how much you guys have helped the show out. It's incredible. Thank you guys so much, and for your patience too with the station transition. So we are live on KTLK Digital Broadcasting, the Fringe FM. You can listen to the show Monday night through Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific to 11 p.m. And after the broadcast, The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable comes on as well. You can also join our chat room at thefringe.fm/chat room, and you can drop any questions that you want to in there. You can also contact the show via email at contact@lightingthevoid.com. I want to give out a disclaimer, too, since I don't have a banner. If you order anything from the shop, most everybody's order is out. It's on the way or processing. But if you do, because of COVID or whatever, it could take up to 4 weeks for you to get it. And that's all seriousness because of what's going on. They've had to sub out manufacturers and stuff. So, but some of you guys are still getting stuff, and I really appreciate it. But you know what? I mean, what's the point? If I can't see you in your beautiful Voidwalker gear, send me your pictures when you get it. Please, pretty please, let me see you guys. And because I got a big project I'm working on about that, by the way. So the website for reference tonight is soulcenteredhealing.net. And this is a story that's kind of being spread around, and it's for those that want to explore spirituality and consciousness and all of these realms that we talk about. This story has been talked about quite a bit, actually. So let's get into this. Dr. Tom Zinser is a hypnotherapist and spiritual healer. He's a retired author and international speaker living in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And after serving as a staff psychologist at a local psychiatric hospital, Dr. Zinser started a private practice in 1980. And in 1987, he was specialized in hypnosis and the treatment of dissociative disorders when he met Katharine Mackey, who channeled a spirit entity named Gerod. And through Katharine, Gerod offered information about specific clients that was helpful in their treatment. He also offered information about spiritual and metaphysical realities in general. And after several sessions with Gerod, Dr. Zinser established a clinical collaboration with him that continued for 15 years. In addition to helping clients, this collaboration led to an unprecedented mapping of psychic and spirit dimensions of the self. The result was an approach to healing which he called the soul-centered healing. And soul-centered healing accepts the validity and importance of what we currently know about the physical, emotional, and psychological levels of an individual. However, soul-centered healing expands this framework and vision to include the psychic and spirit dimensions of a person as well. And again, that website is soulcenteredhealing.net. Thank you, Dr. Zinser, for coming on the program. Like, I'm stoked about this, so thank you for coming on.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm looking forward to it, Joe, and I'll let you lead.
Well, I would like to start off with, for those that aren't familiar with your story, this is pretty fascinating because it's totally bringing, in my opinion, science and spirituality together. How someone who's a clinical therapist really just went down this path. I mean, we kind of went over it in the intro there, but can you just, briefly walk us through what happened there, if you don't mind me asking you?
Well, I'll tell the story, and you just cut me off if it gets too long.
Sure.
In 1987, as you said, I was a psychologist, mainly practicing hypnotherapy, mainly working with people with dissociative disorders, and that included multiple personality. Today, that's called DID, dissociative identity disorder. And that's where you see people who have personalities living in the same body that appear to be separate individuals. And that was the phenomenon in 1983 that I began working with. In 1987, when I met Gerod through Katherine, I began asking him. I met with him each week, was asking him questions that I had run into with clients where there was blocking or difficulties or couldn't get through. And Gerod would give me information. I would go back to the client the next week in our session, use that information, and just found that it was more and more successful. The information he gave me, it was panning out. So that's where it started in terms of normal psychology.
Wow.
The issue I would start with here is the phenomenon of subpersonalities. And with multiple personality, they have subpersonalities, as I said, that act as though they're separate individuals. The issue here is that we all have subpersonalities created in our life. Usually those subpersonalities are created in childhood and early adolescence, before the ego is very well formed. And the subpersonalities are created when the conscious self can no longer tolerate what's happening. So when you have accidents, if you have someone being abused, if you have someone terrified, and the conscious mind just cannot deal with it, it will dissociate. And a subpersonality created to take over. And that subpersonality will deal with the trauma in whatever way it can. Once that trauma is passed, that subpersonality will move to the unconscious. However, it doesn't disappear, and it doesn't dissolve, but it lives at an unconscious level. And I look at it, I describe it best as a psychic being. And so we all have these subpersonalities created. And, of course, people who have a much more traumatic life, there can be a whole series of subpersonalities that have been created to protect them. So when I see a person, I don't see a person now. I retired from clinical practice. But when I work with a person and they are in trance, I will communicate with these subpersonalities. A second thing I would add is there is a part of each of us that Gerod called the higher self. Other people have talked about higher self. Other people have called it the true self, the God part. There's lots of names. But the higher self is something Gerod also taught me about. He described the higher self as a creation of the soul. It's created when we as a soul incarnate, and it is with us throughout our life. And that higher self, you can also communicate to that higher self as well. And that plays a central part in the healing process, each person's own higher self. So that's where it starts in terms of what we would understand as parts of ourselves, these subpersonalities that can be triggered later in life. And when they are triggered, some sense they will play out the same protection they used when they were first created. So you might have a 40-year-old who goes through a certain experience in an ego state, or a subpersonality is triggered. It may be a 3-year-old. 40-year-old isn't aware of what's being triggered, but may react emotionally or psychologically as that kind of younger state. So that's kind of a basic concept, subpersonalities and the higher self.
So if you don't mind me asking you, this is, I'm not sure if you are aware of it, but I know my audience has seen that movie Split, where it shows, it's about a comic book character, but he has subpersonalities that, there's like 5 different ones. But the crazy thing is, and this is what I want to ask you about this before we get into the spirit dimensions, is does the patient take on the physical attributes of the person as well? Like I've heard of instances where, someone might have a disease, but when a subpersonality comes out, that disease is gone. Almost like the placebo effect takes over because they believe they're that personality. Is this the same thing, this phenomenon that you're discussing?
That would be in the same category. When you have a multiple personality, and I'm going to call it multiple personality, that's rather than dissociative identity disorder. When you have a multiple personality with these different characters, they will talk, have different mannerisms, different facial expressions, different from each other. And in that sense, they'll manifest differently. When we're talking about somebody, in a sense, more normal, who has subpersonalities that are not so strong or presenting, you'll still see people change their demeanor or maybe speak in a different way. It's not really quite as obvious often, but it does happen. So I would say yes. You'll see different kind of manifestations from the same person.
Okay, that's very interesting. Now, at any point in time when this started happening, was Katherine, did she just happen to be, I don't have to know the personal story, but was she a patient of yours? Is that how you met her? Or was it through another means?
No, Katherine was a bookkeeper. I was in a private practice with other therapists.
Okay. And
Katherine was a part-time bookkeeper. He overheard me speaking with one of the other psychologists during our lunch break in the lunchroom. And I was talking to the psychologist about out-of-body experience and that kind of phenomenon that I had encountered with a client. Katherine had listened to that brief conversation she called me into her office several days later and told me that after she heard that conversation, she went home and she had an experience some years earlier when Gerod, this spirit, made contact with her mentally. It frightened her, and she shut it down. She went back after hearing this conversation between my partner and myself. She tried this again with her husband, and Gerod came through.
Yeah, okay.
And so then she asked me if I would like to have a session with Gerod, just out of curiosity. I think she wanted to know that it was real, and she wanted to give me an opportunity to try something strange.
Now, were you completely skeptical of this at the time?
No, I was not skeptical. I had worked with enough strange kind of phenomenon with clients through hypnosis and the multiple personality. I was not skeptical about the possibility of communication with one in the spirit realm. I did have to work myself to make sure that this was not a part of Katherine communicating, like a multiple personality, that it wasn't a part of her, like her higher self. I just needed to determine that it was, in fact, a separate soul from Katherine, and she was allowing Gerod to communicate through her. And I pretty well felt like I determined that within several sessions. I was pretty confident. So that's where we kind of started. This information was so helpful, blew my mind really, that after several sessions, like you said, I asked Katherine if she was willing to work with me if I collaborated with Gerod. So that's when we formed this kind of a collaboration. I met with Katherine probably once a week. I brought in clinical questions, metaphysical questions. I recorded those sessions, transcribed them, and then would take information back the next week with clients in their sessions and see if that information proved out. So that was the process, 15 years, pretty much. Except for vacations, I met with Gerod every week, and we dialogued about everything.
So for the period of your practice, you had practiced with dissociative disorder. How many clients do you think that you've, just a round figure, that you've talked with that have had this disorder? What's called a disorder?
Oh, multiple personality.
Yeah.
The multiple personality specifically.
Sure. Yeah. Dissociative.
I'd say probably about 25 or 30.
No,
and that's the strict.
That's
a strict diagnosis. A strict diagnosis. But again, all of my clients, I would work, well, most would work and identify their subpersonalities and work with them during the session. So, for example, if you took a 5-year-old who maybe the mother or father lost their cool and hit the child, and that 5-year-old may have been so shocked or hurt that it dissociated and a subpersonality created who took that slap and that hurt and that trauma. And like I said earlier, once that 5-year-old kind of, maybe the parents smoothed it over, once the child's kind of restabilized, that subpersonality has gone to the unconscious. 5 years old. So this person, 20 years later, 25 years old, that person still has a 5-year-old living within them and can be triggered if, say, for example, a friend or a partner did hit them or felt threatened like that. It could trigger that 5-year-old. And that 5-year-old then would present.
So the whole inner child thing of like what we talk about in psychology, the realness of the inner child actually becomes surreal or more real in this case with a lot of people when they've been abused at a young age, right?
Well, I would say abuse, but it can also be accidents. It can be, let's say, a child starts school and has some kind of incredible anxiety about being in school. That could be traumatic. And I think it's important to say that someone's trauma cannot be defined from the outside.
Right.
We can't say whether somebody was traumatized or not. That is their experience. And you can have kids go through school and be fine and no problem, but you can have a kid who's, for them, it's a traumatic experience. So these subpersonalities, they carry their pain or their fear or their hurt or their anxiety. In the healing process, in hypnosis, you can communicate with them directly. And the idea is that you help them to share whatever it is that happened. Because it's as if when that trauma happened, it was like an interrupted circuit, where instead of going all the way through the energy happening and being expressed, it gets caught inside. So in the hypnosis, talking to these subpersonalities, you work with them to share. And when they share, that energy finally comes all the way through into consciousness and out. Once that happens, that subpersonality is then in a position to release whatever that pain or hurt or fear is. And once that release happens, there is a place of light and comfort within us, within each person. That subpersonality will integrate that into that place of light and comfort. So that's the healing process with the subpersonality. And so with clients, you're working with their higher self to identify any subpersonalities like that basically interfere or get triggered or kind of create emotional blocks for someone. And they're not aware of these personalities, but they're being triggered.
So I can imagine if that has been released under your care, maybe for the first time, that gets pretty intense sometimes, right? I can imagine.
Yes, it ranges, and basically the healing process that I develop, it is determined by the clients within their self what exactly has to be shared of that experience. It's not like everybody has to have the whole trauma shared again. But it ranges all the way from sharing some of it so that there can be a release all the way to the other end where, yes, they are kind of reliving the trauma, kind of like a audio video right there. So it varies according to the person, and that's determined by the person, not by me, about how much has to be shared in order to have a release.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, I could definitely see why you're interested in this. Now, at the first part of the show here, before we get into our break, I just want to stay into the scientific part of it, and before we get into the spirit world. Now, so this happens as obviously what you said, as a result of what's ever happened early in their life. But is this where we develop the ego? Like, you know, how the ego tends to protect us from things. Usually when it comes out, we're boastful and things like that. But what I think is it's really just trying to protect that spot in you. Is that what you think as well, or is that what you found?
Well, Joe, you're jumping in. You're jumping into the deep water here. I've talked about the subpersonalities. I've talked a little bit about higher self.
Uh-huh.
But in answer to your question, I'm going to talk about a part, and this is not creative, but I wound up calling it the protective part of the mind.
Okay.
And this is a part that Gerod identified and described to me. It's a part that each of us has, and it's a little difficult to understand in our Western culture with our kind of conscious level emphasis. But the protective part is a part of us that is conscious. It's aware, but it is aware only in the present. It is always, always present, watching. It was created to protect the self, and it starts with protecting the body. So the protective part is always aware in the present. If you're going to the grocery store tomorrow, or if something happened to you yesterday, the protective part is not concerned about that. The protective part is concerned about what's happening right now and protecting the body from anything that might be threatening. The protective part, it's not like it has to stay on duty like an army sentinel, but it is watching. It is aware. And if there is something threatening, that protective part is what will usually react first. And in that reaction, it can also trigger or be involved in triggering a subpersonality to handle whatever it is, whatever that threat is. So this protective part of the mind, and this might be an interesting little part of the story, when I first started working with clients and we were trying to identify trauma, identify things that needed to be healed, I would get blocked. The closer we got to someone's trauma, the more blocked I would get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this went on for several years. When I started working with Gerod, and he identified this protective part, what I learned was that my clients' protective parts were reacting and blocking my work because they saw me just, in a sense, riling up all the past hurt, all the past pain.
Right.
So from their point of view, I was a bull in a china shop.
Yeah, you were just knocking down walls and barriers. Just, yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Well, what happened is, after Gerod identified the protective part, I began to communicate with it directly, usually within the first session with a client. And I would explain to the protective part, make sure it understood what we were doing and why. And when I had its agreement to continue the healing process, I hardly ever had to work with it again because it was an agreement. It understood that what we were doing was for the health and improvement of the client, of the self.
Right.
And the protective part was always for whatever was for the self, whatever was helpful, whatever was good for the self. But once it understood what we were doing, we weren't just bringing up this pain so the client would feel pain.
I got you. We got to take our break here. All right,
okay.
Doc, but I'm telling you guys, this is going to get more interesting as we go down the road here. We're going to get into what earthbound spirits are, as well as the higher self, talk about that more, the inner worlds, darkness and evil, and the soul. We'll be right back.
listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
From a cave in the depths of your mind, it's Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
So are you tired of being tired? Well, then it's time to get the tea. Hey, it's Lisa here to tell you about this all-natural, all-organic tea I've been drinking that has had great results for over 20 years. It's called Life Change Tea, and it's specially formulated to help detoxify and cleanse your kidneys, liver, colon, and blood all at once. The colon is one of the most ignored organs in the human body. The faster that waste is eliminated from the body, the less time that waste sits in our intestines, spreading toxins to our bloodstream. This tea helps cleanse chemicals caused by outside intruders from our entire digestive system. And get this, weight loss can be a side effect. And with continued use of the tea, you can experience clearer, healthier, younger looking skin, increased energy, and a happier outlook on life. So if you're tired of being tired, get the Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. And like me, you'll be glad you did.
The Liberator rocket heater will heat your home for free. The highly efficient Liberator rocket heater has no moving parts. It's safe and strong, constructed of 1/4-inch steel. So like all things made in the USA, it's built to last. Uses any kind of wood, sticks, even scrap in its gravity-fed firebox. And it heats workshops, homes, garages, outbuildings, industrial areas, and barns. Watch the video of this blast furnace stove in action. Visit rocketheater.com. That's rocketheater.com.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling. The ground shook. You could hear rushing water. And then, history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails. Stores with their shelves strip bare. ATMs can't operate. Deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand 3 truths. FEMA is broke. The system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25-year shelf life. Normally $137, now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147, shipped in 1 business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
This is Elle. I listen to Lighting the Void because it's interactive radio with good content, interesting guests, and a humble host, sharing his journey through the esoteric. Hey, Joe Roop. Thanks for having us along for the ride.
Thank you so much for a delightful evening.
Well, I got a lot of ground to cover.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. Our guest tonight, Dr. Tom Zinser. The website that you can go to for reference tonight while you're listening to the program would be soulcenteredhealing.net. There you'll find his whole story about how this went down. The books are on the website as well. You can also grab the books on Amazon. There's a trilogy of books that you can get. The first title is Soul-Centered Healing, and then The Practice of Soul-Centered Healing, and then The Practice of Soul-Centered Healing Volume 3. So it's this. Now, just to ask you about the books, because I really want to get these books, do you go through some of the actual methods that you used in these books to contact what you ended up contacting?
Well, the first book is written for a general audience, and it tells the story we're talking about right now, going through all the different phenomena as I learned about them from Gerod and clients. So that's the first book, and it tells the story, and I think you'd find it very interesting. The second two books, volume 1 and 2 of the practice, that really was written for hypnotherapists, and it will describe the methods and the protocols to use to do this healing. So there's a lot of information in those two, but it is oriented towards the hypnotherapist. So it can be a little technical,
sure,
but it has the protocols and the method, yes.
I'll probably get all of them because I find that fascinating. I was talking to you during the break about Michael Newton, and I became extremely obsessed with what I've talked to Laird Scranton about this, the Dogon, where we talked about how the physical world and the spiritual world was like a figure eight, and where that figure eight crosses. And this is just something I told him, where that figure eight crosses, there is a doorway. And I believe that doorway is the unconscious, the subconscious. And I'm looking at your book here, and you have a title called Door Opens. And I'm sure you're going to say yes, but I just kind of need to know, to what extent do you agree that the doorway to the spirit realm is the subconscious in our human body and our minds?
Well, I look at the unconscious as an undefined realms.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of psychologists will talk about the unconscious like somehow it's in our brain, but I look at it as realms.
Right.
And yes, if you go into the unconscious, you'll go through the personal history. But then when you move into the soul level reality, then you can kind of be moving in a lot of realms. When the body dies, now this is my belief, it is basically walking through a door. There is nothing to be afraid of about death itself. I don't want to die a painful death, but there's nothing frightening about death itself. I kind of compare it to those dreams we wake up with, where we think we're still in the dream, and it takes us a little while to kind of get our wits about us and remember who we are. Well, when we cross over after death, that's the experience I would describe it as. We'll remember the life we just lived, but we will also kind of reawaken to our soul level consciousness. So I believe in these kind of doors. There's lots of doors.
No,
but that's one.
What? So I want to continue with this discussion about Gerod, but just real quick while it's on my mind. Have you been to the depths of? You said the soul world is deeper than we imagine. That's what you believe. How deep? How many levels have you? I mean, not to be technical, but we're taught that there's like heaven and hell, and that's it. Whatever, when we grow up, or at least I was. But is there really like levels to this, like levels of deepness in the spirit realm?
Boy,
that's a tough question, I know, but
we don't have a language for it. But when I have worked with someone and they're in trance, that's basically an entree to their unconscious. And in that you go all kinds of places, and that includes past lifetimes. I'm working with a soul. My clients are souls. And these souls, almost all of them, have history of lifetimes. And besides that, they also have their own history of being in the spirit realm, where all of us have been, and most of us will go back to, between lives.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other realms, and there are dark realms. And so, yeah, I would say there are different realms. But that was not the focus of my work, is to explore those realms.
You were more about the healing?
My work was, yes, when my clients have a problem, that was what I was focused on.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I imagine that you've seen and experienced all kinds of things as you're trying to heal your patients,
Yes, I just can't imagine. Well, I worked with, it's been 32 years of this work, and the phenomenon I encountered has just been all over the place. Yes.
See, this is where I get tripped up, because that to me seems more real than what I've heard by a million gurus that I've talked to that claim to know everything about the dimensions and things like that. The only thing that's come close in my life to corresponding or understanding that, it would be the Tree of Life or the Kabbalah. And I think that's just a substructure that maybe we made up so that we can explore these realms, but that's a whole another subject. So when you said that you would try to get through these blocks with your patients, and Gerod would talk to you about it, what did Gerod, was there like a method? Was each person have individual, I guess, ways of getting through those blocks? Or was Gerod teaching you something that we don't know as humans to get through that doorway? Or the block, rather?
Gerod could read my client's soul in present time. That was the issue that convinced me to collaborate with him. So when I talked to him, and I would talk about working with Joe Smith, and I got to a point where things shut down, and I would say to Gerod, are you able to see this situation, and is there information here? And Gerod then may give me information. He may tell me, yes, there's a subpersonality who's quite frightened, and it's a little boy, and he's dressed like this, such and such.
Oh, wow.
And then I might ask him about another client that had run into a problem and got a block, and he might say, yes, you'll find that there's a past life personality that is reacting now, and it is trying to stop what you're doing because it's getting into its own pain. So look for the one that's wearing the blue dress and the dark hair. Now we've not talked about that. That is, there are past life subpersonalities. And so he would identify who or what was in the way.
Now,
I would go back.
Go ahead, sorry.
I would go back the next week with that client, go into trance. I would not tell them what Gerod told me, but they would go into trance, and I would maybe bring up a question. I might ask higher self, last week we were working on such and such when we got blocked. Higher self, I'm going to ask that you look inside. Are you able to see a female with a blue dress there and dark hair? If I got a yes, then I would begin to pursue that. I would ask that one in the blue dress to come forward and communicate with me, and then we would start working. So Gerod's information was reading the particular individual, and it could be all kinds of things could be going on from one person to the next. So I never knew what information Gerod was going to give. Okay. Just curious, because, I mean, if there is a doorway to that realm, I'm sure we would all like to know it, but I guess what I'm hearing is it can be so fragmented and deep and so individualistic that there is no set method, or I guess we could say no fundamental method or formula once you made it to the doorway of that block to get through without this Gerod knowing the specific situation of that person. Well, let me go further with that. In working with Gerod, with so many situations, so many different phenomena, that was my learning. Each one was a new learning, but eventually all of those different things accumulated to give me a bigger picture. And what I would say, Joe, is that the phenomenon I worked with primarily were these subpersonalities created in present life. There were subpersonalities that come forward that were created in a different lifetime, past life. The third phenomenon that often came up, Gerod talked about often, was what I called external entities. And an external entity could be a spirit. An external entity could be an extraterrestrial. An external entity could be a dimensional being. So he would be talking to me about those. But those are the three primary phenomena. Present life subpersonality, a past life subpersonality, and then in external entities, and they come in all shapes and sizes. So in working with those over the years, there were certain patterns developing about how to work with them. So working with a subpersonality, for example, after working with enough of them, you learn how to talk with them and make it safe for them to be able to share what's happened and have that release. So it would be nice to have Gerod always working with me, but there came a point where I didn't need to have Gerod's information because he had taught me how to work with these different phenomena.
Okay.
So that's what those second two books are about. Those are the protocols.
Fantastic. Yeah, protocols. That's the good word for it that I was looking for, because I have a very analytic mind, and man, if I could understand just how to get to that. Now, can we do this with ourselves? Like, if we read your book, could we talk to ourselves and get to that point? Is that even possible?
Well, you're bringing up a question many people ask. And the answer is there are some people, and some of those were my clients, who could, after they kind of learned how to do it, they could work with their higher self and identify their own subpersonalities and communicate with them. However, in general, I would say it would be very difficult for an individual to work with their own subpersonalities. You kind of would have to wear two hats at once, and that's difficult to do because you're working with your own trauma then. And you have to be able to talk to these subpersonalities in a way that is reassuring to them, that you help guide them in a way that it feels safe, and they receive that light, love energy. So technically, yes, there are people who can communicate with their own subpersonalities. But I would say you can, each of us, can become aware of subpersonalities by paying attention to our emotional reactions. And when somebody has an intense reaction, it kind of comes at them out of the blue or it's way out of proportion.
Right, yeah.
If that person stopped at that moment and let themselves get into that reaction, almost kind of let your imagination be free to kind of get in touch with who is reacting here, who just came forward here. You may be able then to identify what that protection is about, what the experience is here. So say, for example, somebody has had different rejection experiences in their life, and not a lot, but some rejections. And when those rejections happen, they know that they have a certain reaction. They've been through it a few times. When they catch that reaction, they may be, in a sense, catching a glimpse of a subpersonality.
Gotcha. Yeah. See, I've noticed that too in my life and some other relationships I've been, whether it's been family, friends, or whatever. It's like a switch turns on, and they either I've seen people run and hide, just poof, disappear. Right. I've seen people snap and just it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I've seen people just turn on a dime, and I don't. So to me, that's always been like, oh, well, that person can get moody sometimes, but is it really moodiness? Like, yeah. Is that what that is? Because They were a perfectly healthy, loving person just 1 minute ago, but you might have said the wrong word or whatever, and next thing you know, you're in a different reality with this person immediately.
That's exactly right.
And it's,
yes,
I got to tell you, man, to just as a human being, being in that experience, if you're not aware of what's going on some level, maybe not as deep as the level that you're aware of it, but if you're just not aware of it at all, it can be traumatic to you, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You feel out of control, or you feel threatened and you don't know where it's coming from.
Right.
Or you're having an emotional explosion that's distressing in itself. So yes, but what you're describing, I would agree with you. People will switch on a dime when their trigger has been hit. And what we're saying is that those triggers go back to some earlier experience. And yes, the reaction can be immediate.
So do you find that I personally would like to believe, and yes, people, I promise you, we're going to get into the spirit world and all of that. I really want to get into the understanding of the psychological and scientific stuff. But do you believe, well, let me ask you this. Like, I believe that the emotions are a compass to your truth. But what I don't mean like the ultimate truth. Like if someone says something and you become emotional, well, the truth is what they're saying is true because they're a bad person because it hurt your feelings. But what I mean is like your emotions are the truth about what that person is saying. Like if someone says something hateful to you, the emotion that you feel is your truth about hateful things, not the truth about this situation. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I've always used it as like a guidepost because the mind can be very tricky. How do the emotions play in your work? Do you use them for a guidepost more than you do what's going on with a person's mind? Because I'm trying to figure out how to align my emotions, my soul, and my mind and my heart, all of it, right? But I find that my emotions are closer to the truth than anything when it's all said and done. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Well, I'm not sure yet. Partly, I think, because I consider the emotions to be very powerful. And I think I would agree with you that there is a truth about emotion that if we allow ourselves to feel it, allow ourselves really to experience it, it will be the truth of where we are in that moment. And one of the biggest issues is how much people are psychologically defended against emotion, whether it's hurt or threat or pain or fear. So in that sense, that is a huge issue, is the emotion and our defenses against feeling.
Yeah, it's like we can't be happy because the moment we, and I'm not saying that as a matter of fact, but when you're working your way through these things, the moment you start feeling a deep happiness or love or even intimacy for anything, it just manifests so many of those protective things, or it just seems to trigger them. And it's like, how do I have this happiness in my life that I'm sure God or whatever wants me to experience if I'm constantly not willing to go to that place or be vulnerable? You know, it's like a catch-22.
Yeah. I mean, to me, part of this is needing to talk about the big picture. And to go back to Gerod's information, he is saying that each of us is a being of light.
Uh-huh.
We're created of the light. That, whatever you want to call it, God,
sure,
the divine, the creator, whatever. I'm going to call it the light. That we are each created of light. And we all know that light inside of us, even if consciously we're not very aware of it, or we're even feeling disconnected from it. It is not gone. It is there. And the issue in healing is to bring light into the self, into the center of that soul light. And that's when you start identifying blocks. Whatever blocks that light, pain or hurt or fear or anger, that's what you want to heal. So you can bring light into that area or into that level. So from the beginning, we are souls of light. We have a place in the spirit realm of light when we leave here. Everything will be fine in the spirit realm. We'll understand what's going on. So while we're in the body here, while we're incarnate, we have that light within us. And I think part of the issue in life is learning more and more how to be fully in touch with that light. And that doesn't mean you're living in some kind of ecstasy 24 hours a day. It just means you have a deep and residing confidence and a faith in that light of who you are, who the Creator is. So it doesn't mean that we live a struggle-free life, but it does mean we're connected. We know we're okay. We got work to do, but we know we're okay. So I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. It totally does. Because there's always a balance going on. But the light, I mean, I told you a story during the break about what I believe too. I believe the light is a real thing. And if you study any mystical or esoteric society, even religions, there's always a discussion about that light. We are at the top of the hour. So when we get back, we're going to discuss with Dr. Zinser about more about his books, but also when we go into these spirit realms, when he went there, what was there? And I'm also going to bring up our discussion with Alex Takaris about the nature of evil. Does it exist? Things of that nature. What was Dr. Zinser's experience with all of this? Please, y'all go check out the website and the books, soulcenteredhealing.net. We'll be right back. More Lighting the Void coming up. Stay with us.
Listening to the Fringe FM.
I'm Jess Rogie. If you haven't heard enough about Elon Musk this week, I've got 2 news stories for you. First, he tweeted out that the aliens built the pyramids, obviously, and he was invited by the Egyptian government to come visit the pyramids. Also in Musk news, Musk's company has been developing Neuralink, which creates a direct link between the brain and a computer. How will it work? Well, Neuralink is installed by using a sewing machine-like device that will sew threads to the implanted brain chip, which would then connect to a USB-C cable that enables full bandwidth data streaming. The CEO plans to enhance the chip's capabilities and allow mankind to compete with artificial intelligence. The company's first iteration of the Neuralink chip is to help people with neurological issues and brain disorders such as Parkinson's and depression. He's also planning on holding an event on August 28th that will talk more about the mysterious chip and provide the public with more information. What would suck is if you got the USB-C cable and then USB-C became obsolete. You may have heard of planets, but have you heard of planets with a B? A new study submitted to the Astrophysical Journal detailing what they're calling a new class of exoplanets, the planet. Scientists have been studying the supermassive black holes found at the center of most galaxies, which are usually very active. While scientists originally thought planets in the accretion disk had been rogue exoplanets or planets orbiting the star captured by the black hole, this new study proposes that they actually form in a disk in a somewhat the same way as planets form around young stars. Because of the viscosity is even lower at the outer edges of the disk, planets out there can grow quickly to masses that are 20 to 3,000 Earth masses, reaching what is considered the upper limit of planet size. A wood henge has been discovered in Portugal. The newly found wooden structure was built at the end of the Stone Age and is similar in design to the famous Stonehenge Circle in England. The Neolithic discovery is remarkable because nothing like it has ever been found in Portugal. The lead archaeologist Antonio Valera says it was a monumental wood construction of which the foundation remains. The site was used from the Middle Neolithic times to the beginning of the Bronze Age. This is the Rogie Report News on the Fringe FM. I'm Jess Rogie.
Howdy, this is Catalina, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
Have you suffered in silence or experienced stress from a paranormal experience? Even if it happened 20 years ago, when thinking or talking about it today still makes you feel sick to your stomach or makes your heart beat faster, or you suddenly can't breathe. Maybe you even feel those old familiar signs of a panic attack trying to reach the surface. You could have unprocessed emotional responses. Those reactions of terror and trauma are no different than living through a horrible assault, childhood abuse, or a terrible car accident. It can be nearly impossible to find help. The very instance of seeing a ghost or encountering a cryptid could be clinically described as seeing or hearing things that aren't there. You could be considered psychotic, or at best, you're just not taken seriously. Out of a growing mountain of research, the National Institute for Integrative Healthcare showed that 8 out of 10 veterans who completed just 6 one-hour EFT sessions no longer tested positive for PTSD. If you've had paranormal trauma, you can contact Metaphorical Archaeology by calling 214-995-3754. Again, that's 214-995-3754 for a discreet consultation.
Telepath is a weekly digital newsletter filled with the latest paranormal news, trending topics, and fresh articles from some of the most popular critical thinkers in the community today. Stay informed on your favorite paranormal podcasts and live streaming talk shows. Interact with the Telepath and upload your paranormal story or pics. It could be featured in an upcoming edition. Sign up right now for the free Telepath newsletter at paranormal.radio. That's paranormal.radio.
Born out of the alchemical tradition of Paracelsus is a medical tradition called Spagyria. Though not many people practice this work today, Phoenix Aurelius has been researching and teaching this work for the last 15 years, and he needs your support.
Hi, I'm Phoenix Aurelius, and I'm the founder of the Phoenix Aurelius Research Society, where I perform modern scientific research on the methods and techniques of Paracelsian alchemy and Spagyria for health, wellness, agriculture, ecology, and more. All my work is 100% funded by the public, so if you like what I'm doing and you want to support my research, please consider making a purchase of spagyric medicines from my apothecary, fund your own spagyric IDF wellness research, or participate in my group study or one-on-one immersion courses so that you can learn how to perform this work for yourself. I want to thank you in advance for your support.
Visit thefringe.fm/alchemy research and enter coupon code FRINGE and receive 15% off anything and everything on the website. That's thefringe.fm/alchemy research. And thank you for doing your part and keeping alchemy alive in the modern day.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS Tidris.
The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
And welcome back to Lighting, starting the second hour here with Dr. Tom Zinser, who's a retired clinical psychologist and hypnotherapist as well. And he worked with multiple personality patients, but really stumbled upon something interesting as he told us his story of meeting Gerod through Katherine. And on this show, we've kind of discussed quite a bit about the unconscious and the subconscious and how we think that it's kind of like the doorway to the spirit realm. And what we've learned from Dr. Zinser so far hasn't really strayed from that fact, though. But it is very interesting to me that you went through this in a scientific way. I mean, this is obviously real practice medicine. Hypnotherapy is a real thing. I believe that some people are afraid of it. I know I was. And again, I do want to thank you for coming on the broadcast, by the way. So yeah, before we get back into this, thank you very much for coming on.
Well, you're welcome, Joe. I'm glad to do it.
And I'll go ahead and open the phone lines up. If you got any questions that you want to ask, it's 1-800-588-0335. You can call in and ask a question to Tom Zinser. And so I'm understanding that you're retired from all of this now, right? Just to be clear, you don't do any sessions anymore or anything of that nature? You're totally retired from this practice?
I retired from clinical practice, and basically what I'm doing now is I do these kind of interviews. I'll be doing a training consultant group for hypnotherapists, but I'm not in clinical practice any longer.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, because I'm probably going to get these books and try to learn this myself. The opportunity to learn this is really, really, really intriguing to me. If it's not the out-of-body experience, it's trying to tap into these realms and obviously knowing what we can know from it while we're here on this earth. Before you said that there's really no reason to be afraid of death. However, you don't want to die in pain, but I still worry about things like you and I discussed reading Robert Monroe's books, and he ran into a lot of people that, whether they had addictions or fear or some type of trauma, seemed to be trapped in these realms. Did you run into this yourself at all, or in a different way?
Yeah, I worked with, excuse me, I guess I will talk first about spirits.
Sure.
These are souls, and they some have lived Earth's lifetimes, some have not. And the ones that have lived Earth's lifetimes and are stuck, I'll give you Gerod's, what he said to me in the beginning. To make it simple, is that he described three kinds of spirits. He said there are earthbound spirits, and these are spirits who, when they die, for some reason, they do not go to the spirit realm of life. They may be afraid of judgment. They may feel guilty. They may feel ashamed. They may feel like they're going to get punished. They may be afraid of the unknown, so they try to stay close to Earth. They try to turn back and stay attached here. And they're called earthbound spirits. The second type of spirit, he called low-lying spirits. These are spirits that are not so much stuck. They have more awareness of operating at this kind of spirit level, and they are the kind who can mess with people. They travel. They kind of know a little bit more what they're doing. They're not evil, not usually, but they can mess with you, and they can interfere with you. The third kind of spirit are those in darkness. They are still souls of light, but that light has been pretty much covered over, and they have gone into darkness or kind of been pulled into darkness or seduced into darkness, and that's where they exist. And those dark souls can also, all three of these kinds of souls, all three of these kinds of spirits, can interact with or make contact with humans, with us, under certain conditions. They can all make a contact with humans under certain conditions. So those are the spirits as Gerod talked about them. And they're stuck in the sense that they're afraid of going to the light, or they've lost sight of the light, and they may be caught up in their own pain that they, when they died. If someone dies, they may be in a state of hatred for others for some reasons. So they can get stuck and not go to the light. But Gerod's words are the very best thing, once we leave the body, is to go to the light. Everyone is welcome back to the light.
Okay, so even if people get stuck, eventually they're probably going to go back, right? But it does make me wonder about energies and attachments, which is something that we've discussed before. It seems as if we become distinctly aware in our lives of what a lot of people call toxic energy, or attachments, or things that we just can't seem to move away from. Like we know even our destiny, or possibly our happiness could be on the other side, but there's some kind of negative force that pulls us, whether it's whether it's a state of mind, or behavior, or a certain type of relationship, whether it be family friendly or partner. But I am curious as to what your thoughts are on this energy when it comes to entities. Like, how do they attach themselves? How do these beings attach themselves to us? And why are they doing that?
Well, an earthbound spirit will attach. An earthbound spirit can attach to a place, and that's when people are reporting a haunting, and that's not unusual. That someone may die and stay attached to a place because emotionally they are very attached to it. But the maybe more serious is spirits who attach to a person, and that attachment for the earthbound spirit, they want a place to be, and to attach to a place or a person gives them some definition, gives them a place, and in some sense they may just want to hang out. It's a place for them to be. For others, they may try to interfere with your life. They may try to kind of exercise their own decisions, and may really cause disturbance to you. And earthbound spirits can do that. Low-lying spirits can do that. The dark souls can do that, and they usually do not want to let you know they're present. You may feel their effects. You may feel stuff that is causing you distress or confusion or upset. The dark souls don't really want to be discovered. So in terms of attachment, the dark souls will attach, get very entangled with someone because they still need light energy. They're in the darkness, they're souls, but they still need the light energy. And Gerod said that we humans, for these dark souls, we humans are stepped down light energy. These dark souls will not go to the light for a lot of different reasons that have got them stuck. But they do need that light, and so they will set up interaction, contact with humans to siphon that light for themselves. It will sustain them. The low-lying spirits and the earthbound spirits are not so disconnected from light like these dark souls. Their attachment is really to give them definition, give them a place to be, something to do, someone to connect with, because the earthbound state after the body dies apparently can be kind of a pretty gray reality. And if you don't have some definition, some kind of focus, apparently, you can kind of drift forever, sort of. So it's not easy to describe how the attachment itself takes place, but to go back to something you talked about earlier, emotion is one of them. These spirits can attach through emotion. And if they attach, some attach because of addiction. And this is one that I think Far Journeys, Robert Monroe talked about.
Right.
But again, this is the kind of thing where these entities are individuals too. And so they've got their own story. And when they attach to somebody, they've attached them. It's not just random. It's not, in some sense, they might pick out somebody that they are attracted to because of a light. But again, it turns into individual stories. And in my work and in soul-centered healing, when you have an external entity attached, interfering, or intruding into the soul energy itself, in the healing process, the issue is that this entity be removed. That's the bottom line. And so the protocols for external entities is basically designed to have them leave voluntarily, which is preferable, or to remove them forcibly if you have to. So let me stop there and give you...
I want to see how deep this goes. In your first book, there's a part in your book that I might quote here. It says, by the fall of 1986, this is about a client named Diane. Memories of ritual abuse had become a focus in Diane's treatment, and one day during a session, an alter personality came forward who referred to herself as the daughter of darkness. And when this personality came into consciousness, I introduced myself. And she didn't know who Diane was. She didn't know where she was. It was obvious by her facial expression that she was profoundly disoriented. I began to tell her about Diane and the conscious reality. I told her our intention was to help her and heal and be released from any pain and fear. And I told her that we knew some things about the cult that she was involved with, and that nobody, including her, had to keep this experience and knowledge secret any longer, and she could become free of it. So, but when this daughter of darkness, you also go on to tell the story when the alter personality stepped in. You said it was as though the alter personality I had been talking with was yanked off the stage and someone else had stepped through the curtain and into the body, and just with a menacing look and a deep voice speaking with authority said we would go no further. There would be no more questions. The encounter raised the hair on the back of your neck. How did you make it through that? Were you by yourself with this you and this client when you were going through this?
Yes. We were in my office, and this woman was a cult victim, and there were quite a number of what I would call cult personalities created through her trauma. This went on for some time with the cult. But in the particular experience you're talking about, I was talking to the daughter of darkness in a way that was beginning to elicit her agreement and cooperation. And so in that sense, we were making progress. And that's when this other entity just shut it down and stepped in. And what I would share with you is it was that entity that basically turned my life in a new direction. I went to the library after that to look up whatever I could about possession because I didn't know what I was dealing with. And so I went to the library and I found a whole section of the library dealing with the paranormal and spirits and past lives and everything else. That was all new to me. So it was that experience that, in a sense, shook me up and said, something's going on here. So I read a lot of that material over the course of a year. And it just so happened that Gerod appeared about a year later. So that entity did not threaten me in the sense of get out of the chair and come at me. I've had that before, but this was not one. But it was just a I am in control kind of feeling. They weren't going to budge.
Right. I'm skipping lines here, but it just, you say you tried to engage the entity for several minutes. You asked a number of carefully worded questions, and I'm assuming based on your practice, you tried a few things to elicit a response. But it just stared at you.
Yes.
That is so creepy, man.
Well, this to me, this is my first experience like this where I felt this was not part of my client. I mean, I'd worked with a lot of subpersonalities with a lot of people, but this was the first time I felt this was not a part of my client. And so that's what kind of set me off into trying to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah, I want people to get the book because I definitely I got the Kindle version myself, but the first part, and I'm just only skipping lines just, to get people to understand that in this book, it's not just a lot of theorem. He's very detailed about the stories that he went through with some of these people. And he said, following the experience of Diane, you could not rule out that you had encountered a whole separate entity and that there was a sense of evil. What Gerod had said, that these spirits do not belong here. Now, we've talked about this on the show quite a bit. We've had occultists and magicians on the show, people that have actually invoked demonic beings and things like that. Have any of these beings ever told you their names, or did you just kind of get a feeling like, I know this is what people would consider a demon or just some type of dark entity?
Well, I tell you, the issue, having, again, worked with Gerod and learned about this, when I encounter a very dark soul, and it may be an evil soul, what Gerod taught me was how to work with them. And I'd say to you that after I kind of learned what to do here, when I encountered a dark soul, I would say 80% of them, maybe a little more than 80% of them, I could engage. They would communicate with me. I would explain to them about themselves as a soul. And I won't go too deep in this, but Gerod gave two basic approaches to helping these souls, earthbounds, low-lying spirits, or even dark souls. Two strategies to help them release and go home to the light. And that is help them to look inside and see their own light. It's been covered over for them for so long, but if they cooperate with you, you direct them to look inside and find their own light. And when they do, you encourage and help them to take the step to touch that light. When they do, they will reawaken to their soul energy, and they will start to be open to wanting relief. The darkness is not a nice place. So that's the first strategy. The second strategy is some of them are afraid to look inside. Some of them are afraid to touch their own light. Second strategy is we can call to the spirit realm for a high-level teacher or a loved one who has experience with that soul. We can call on that high-level teacher or loved one to come forward and communicate to this soul I'm working with. And if that soul gives permission, there will be a loved one or a spirit guide come forward to communicate information to them about themselves, about what's happened, and about their ability to come home to the light. But it has to be their choice. So those are two basic strategies. And over time, working with Gerod, I've basically learned how to apply those. And the thing is, you just have to know how to help these beings feel safe and offer them something. Give them a reason to talk to me. And that, of course, is helping them move out of this darkness, helping them return to the light. This is a little bit of a side note, but the near-death experience, the NDE. Most people today have heard of this. I would suggest that the light that those people describe when it touches them and what they feel is the infinite love. And none of them want to come back here. That is the very same light that you're offering to these souls in darkness or the earthbound spirits. That's what you're offering to them. What you have to do is help them understand their own fear or pain or anger is in their way. You have to help them, in a sense, take a step to receive the light. So that's kind of long-winded, but that's the two basic strategies for helping these souls. Joe, I'm going to add a third thing here because It's important. When it comes down to it, that a soul will not leave, then the third strategy is you have to find the access they have used to attach or intrude on a person. Now, when you read the book, towards the end, Gerod talks about the agreement between light and dark. And these dark souls cannot intrude and invade another soul without some kind of permission. So that's the first thing. We are not at the mercy of these souls. They can't just walk all over us. They have to have a permission. Problem is that they get what is kind of a backdoor permission, and they do that very often through these subpersonalities. So you have a dark soul, find a 5-year-old subpersonality, and offer that 5-year-old a toy. And that 5-year-old takes that toy from that soul. That's a permission. It's, at least to that dark soul, it is a permission. And that then is when that soul will make the attachment. So if you have souls attached or intruding that refuse to leave, then the last strategy is to work with higher self to find whoever or whatever those outside ones are using to gain access.
Wow.
You close those accesses, and then you can remove those souls because they no longer have a permission. So there's a lot for you.
Yeah, this is fascinating. Like, I've really got to read these books. It was the last break of the night, shortest break of the night. You need to go to the website, soulcenteredhealing.net, to check out the books. We'll be right back. I'll also see if there are any questions in the chat room. Just make sure you tag me or DM me in the chat, or you can call in at 1-800-588-0335. More Lighting the Void coming up. Stay with us.
This is Dancing Dave from Surviving the System, and you're listening to the Fringe FM. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, the best revenge is success.
Have you ever wanted to dream about being a character in your favorite video game or movie? Would you like to dream your fantasy with all 5 senses in detail and remember everything? It's time to bring the dreaming mind back online. Introducing Dreaming for Gamers from Ian Wilson.
Dreaming for Gamers will teach you how to program your dreams to dream what you want from any video game, movie, or source material that you choose. The courses help rehabilitate the dreaming mind out of atrophy so you can remember your dreams, taste, touch, smell, see, and hear, as well as be self-aware and take complete control over the dream state like Neo in The Matrix. You can't catch COVID in a dream, but you can wake up with a happy ending.
Type in thefringe.fm/dreamplay and sign up today to get dreaming now. That's thefringe.fm/dreamplay, or click the banner at thefringe.fm today and take the 7-day dream challenge for free while it lasts.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you're interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm, or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
Ryan Gable here, and I'd like to invite you to my radio broadcast, The Secret Teachings, airing 5 nights a week right here at midnight Pacific on The Fringe FM. Whether you enjoy history, the paranormal, symbolism, the occult, magic, parapolitics, or our annual Super Bowl show, our breakdown of the music entertainment industry, or our practical look at health, we have something for you that's unique, informative, and fun in rare form. Find us at facebook.com by searching facebook.com/The Secret Teachings. Find us online by searching www.thesecretteachings.info. Or you can email us at rdgable, rdgable, @yahoo.com. That's The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, right here at midnight Pacific on The Fringe FM.
This is Rev Dan Lopez from Spiritual Warrior Today Radio, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll-free at 945-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. That's 945-882-7221. Or go to the website, angioprim.com.
This is Preston Dennett from PrestonDennett.weebly.com, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Our guest tonight, Dr. Tom Zinser, discussing his experiences with hypnotherapy, the channeling spirit named Gerod, what he's found through dissociative disorder, multi-personality disorder, what we call these types of things, attachments, spirit entities, all of this stuff. Even before the break, we were discussing evil, and I kind of want to just finish up here as we kind of move into something else. But in your opinion, Dr. Zinser, does evil really do exist? We have people that believe, and I talked to Alex Sikaris about this, that doesn't exist. They just look at things from a polar point of view. But I've got to believe that some of the stuff, things like ritual abuse, these things, to me, they wouldn't exist if evil wasn't real. But now you're discussing agreements, which is something that it just baffles me, because why? Well, I'll just let you speak on that. I don't know why a soul or even two entities, dark or light, would allow someone to go through things like that, especially a child. Don't you ever wonder about that?
Are you talking about the Creator allowing that?
Yeah, or just two entities that agree upon, hey, like you can't do this or to this person without my permission. And it just seems like our souls are so fragmented and all, and I don't know, it's very complex. Now that I've talked to you, there's just a bigger realm that I'm trying to understand here.
Well, I think, Joe, what I would say is if we look at souls, and just for the sake of our talk right now, let's just say most souls live more than one lifetime.
Right.
That souls are on, each soul, on a journey of lifetimes. Gerod said to me, souls incarnate in order to awaken to themselves. And he said each of us, as creatures of light, beings of light, we are one with the Creator. But we're not awakened to that level. He said once a soul awakens to that level, it will not return to Earth. It won't reincarnate. So when we come here, we already come with a history. And our present life is woven out of those past lives as well. It's an ongoing journey. So you, myself, anyone can think about their life, and I would bet they could come up with probably at least one or two issues that their soul has been carrying through more than one lifetime. And if somebody's got a big issue that kind of has traveled with them through their life that they've been concerned about or involved in, very good chance that this comes from a past life as well, that there was that kind of involvement. So it is such a big picture. I can't even know my whole soul story. So I certainly can't know a client's soul story.
Right.
So what we're really interested in is identifying problems that keep one from being aligned with their own light, being attuned to that light. I'm not in it. We're not in it really to understand somebody's whole story. That's their thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be tuned into that when they leave the body and go to the spirit realm of light. They're going to understand how this life has fit in with other lives that they left. So that's a whole level that we don't comprehend our ego consciousness, but we can work with it. We can intuit it. And like you said, emotion can guide us into issues that we've carried with us for a long time. So in terms of this life, my thing is clearing out blocks, clearing out any darkness, bringing in more and more light to the person so that they know that they are a being of light. That's number one, really.
Right. Yeah, because if they know that, then they have a sense of empowerment that they can have love or health, wealth, abundance, and freedom of expression, which it feels like.
Yes.
Health, wealth, abundance, and freedom of expression is something that we all just want so bad, and it seems so simple, but why does it take a walkabouts of years to get there? Is it because we're so fragmented through lifetimes, maybe?
Well, I think you're going to read some of that in my book, but the long and short of it is, in the incarnate life, here in the physical, with our limited ego consciousness, it is the arena where dark and light have an even playing field. And that even playing field gives a person the ability to make choices. So this is where we choose. And that is what we do. And in the choosing is where we learn, is where we begin to become aware, where we can start to wake up. So that issue of being able to choose is a big part of the journey of awakening. And we learn by what we choose and the consequences, the karma. And so the next time we don't do the same thing. And the fact that it takes lifetimes to do that learning is just kind of an indication that this is a very big picture for each soul. It can blow your mind. And
have you ever looked at a person and I mean really looked at them? We rarely look in each other's eyes enough, I think. But I've actually looked at a person and saw, it's hard to explain, man, woman, child. There was such a deep connection there. I saw so many faces, but the eyes never changed. And I felt so connected to that person's energy, that it's almost like I knew instantly, you know? But what do we know? That's the thing. Like, we're trying to figure that out. And is that our soul trying to tell us there's something here? Because I think people get scared of that. They think it's karma immediately, or they want to run away from it. But I don't think that would happen if we weren't meant to. Like, I've worked that out. I've experienced that with my own son too, once or twice. You know, so it's very complex. And this whole thing about DNA, I wonder, when people talk about past lives, Dr. Zinser, if it's like not just us remembering everybody or our ancestors, or was it really just us as a being in another body? You know, because that's how people talk about it. But what if it's just an energy that just gets transferred? I don't know if I'm making any sense, through lifetimes and through DNA and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's getting really into the complex picture.
Sure.
Because, yes, DNA, what we inherit, the genetics. I guess what I would say, Joe, also, again, from Gerod, and he said that every soul, before incarnating, comes in with a blueprint for that life. That blueprint, he said, is often put together with that soul and high-level teachers. And in that blueprint, there will be also planned meetings between souls where agreements are made in the spirit realm to meet up in a particular life, to have a particular experience, and that is quite common.
Wouldn't you say
and
that
when we meet,
that happened with you and Katherine?
You know, that's an interesting question. Yes, it happened in the sense that I believe, without a doubt, our meeting and work with Gerod was planned. But what I found also interesting, I don't really bring this up all the time, but as far as I could find out, and Gerod is in agreement with this, Katherine and I never have shared a past life together.
Wow, really?
And I came to the conclusion that that was set up that way so that Katherine and I did not confuse things between us, that, other lifetimes kind of getting in the way or using the picture or that kind of thing. I believe that we were put together like that so we didn't have that kind of, let's say, baggage. We weren't carrying whole baggage. And it helped make the communication with Gerod clearer. So I think we all have the blueprint we come in with. It's just as important in terms of what Gerod said, is that blueprint is not something that you have to stay with. When we incarnate as the conscious person, we at that point are the chooser. And we can go off the blueprint. And Gerod said, the soul learns from experience. There's no wrong choices. And if you go off the blueprint, he said the soul has eons to work its way back where it needs to go. So the soul's not in trouble. So it again, that kind of big picture. So it is not rare for me to have worked with a client and had to work with past life interference between that person and their spouse or that person and their child. That has become an issue a lot of the times in the healing process. And there are a few times I've worked with couples together. They're each in my office. They're each in trance, and I'm communicating with parts of each of them at the same time.
Oh, wow, really?
Working with them together. Yes.
Did you write about that? That's interesting.
No.
Yeah, I'm sure that's pretty personal. So, yeah. But there's also people that I've come in contact with in my life that I feel like that we're on the same kind of mission, especially right now and what the world's going through. And there's a lot of stuff, some kind of energy of change, transformation, or something that I feel happening. And I don't know if like that happens on a micro level inside of us as humans, but I think that sometimes as a society, it happens too. And I don't know if this COVID virus thing is a part of it, or I don't know. I just feel that there is a change coming. Art Bell used to call it the quickening. And I know even in your book, you have I think a chapter titled The Quickening, right? Or what was that?
Yes, I do.
What was that about?
The quickening is when all of these, all this information began to come together. Almost introduced me to the fact that there are all these other levels.
Yeah. Okay.
And so in my mind, things were really starting to pick up, and for me to try to keep up, because a lot was being revealed.
Right. So I guess we got a few more minutes here to ask you some questions. Let me see. I'm going to go into the chat and see if I can find any questions as well. Do you have a method for people that aren't involved, haven't read your books, or anything of that nature, but they have a feeling, they know that there's a higher self trying to help them? Based on your experience, are there any things that you would say this is an identification of your higher self trying to talk to you? Like, would it be your emotions, or are there specific things you could talk about with that?
I would say number one, it would be your intuition, your gut sense. The other thing is, I work with higher self and clients because there's problems to clear up, but there are a number of methods that people have developed to help you get in touch with your higher self. And the higher self is like your own inner guide. And it's the kind of thing that So if people feel like they're being led by their higher self, they may be tuned into their intuition and they may trust it. But if they learn to connect with higher self more and more, feel trusted more and more, and things become a lot easier when you know you can trust higher self and when to go with it. That is really open to all of us if we want to develop it. So,
oftentimes,
there's ways.
We'll oftentimes get intuition and ego confused, and because I don't know if I'm trying to protect myself from something, and I think and I'd like you to comment on this if you can. I think I'm correct when saying this, that if I'm protecting myself from a vulnerable state or experiencing a deep love or emotion or a connection, then that could be like ego just stepping in, right? But if it's intuition, it's some kind of pull that, let's say, even if you step away from that to protect yourself, something pulls you back. Something's telling you that you got to go this way. That's your intuition, right? I mean, it's hard to explain what the intuition is, I think, sometimes.
Oh yes, it is, because it is a kind of knowing that we can't. It's not physical. We can't point to it and we can't put it under the microscope, but we can attune ourselves to it. We can learn how to attune ourselves to it, and I would agree with you. The ego is a different state of consciousness, and when it gets self-protective, it can not disconnect, but it can step back from the higher self or not listen to higher self because it's trying to protect itself.
Yeah, exactly.
So
you know what I mean? Like, have you ever told somebody the truth, right? And they'll say, well, my intuition's telling me you're lying. And you're like, well, I'm not lying. So that can't be your intuition. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And they believe it's their intuition.
Well, and this is part of the issue of people becoming more discerning, beginning to believe or look at these other levels of consciousness. We are a multi-conscious being. And here in our Western culture, there's so much focus on the ego consciousness. Ego's important. It's the central consciousness as we live here in the incarnate world. But there are many levels of consciousness within us. The subpersonalities, all of them, they have their own consciousness. And the protective part that we talked about, the higher self is a consciousness. And what I said about the body dying, when we go to the light, we remember our soul awareness. That's a consciousness. So, lots of levels.
Now this is, I'm just telling you, the listener, if you've listened to the show quite a bit, this is what Lighting the Void is all about, because here we're talking to, who is a licensed practitioner, someone that learned all of the scientific methods, and I'm pretty sure you studied Freud and Jung and all this stuff, found yourself into the spirit realm, traversed the spirit realm in ways that most people would probably never dare to do while trying to heal people at the same time. And your answer to this is, I just know that there is nothing to be afraid of death. I know there's a light and a darkness, and this thing is so deep. I couldn't tell you how extensive it is. To me, that is total honesty. Like, it's total, this is like, I feel it's real. My intuition tells me that your story is 100% real, if that makes any sense, you know?
Yeah.
I always find when people have all the answers, it just doesn't feel right to me, you know?
Yeah, I feel like the answer that I have is that we are beings of light.
Right, yeah.
And we're trying to wake up. We're trying to wake up, we're trying to go home, and wake up to who we truly are. And that light is powerful. That's what is the center for me. And all the other exploring, I am sure there's all kinds of things I have not been encountered.
Yeah, right.
So
you were focused on the healing.
I'm
right.
Focus on the healing and what gets in people's way. that's where the focus was. Yeah.
Well, I think that this is fantastic, and I'm gonna go through all of this, and I would love to have you back on and carry this discussion a little bit deeper. And probably I'm going to listen to every stinking show that you're on after this too, and go back and listen to Alex's show again. And thank you so much for coming on the broadcast. I really, really do appreciate having you here.
Well, Joe, you're welcome. And if you get into some of the reading and put some things together, I'll be glad to talk to you.
Fantastic. And you guys, I am going to catch up the archives too. I have half the archives met up already, so the other half's coming out all the way up till tonight. And if you want to support the show, please go to lightingthevoid.com. Help us on the Patreon. Go to soulcenteredhealing.net. Grab these books, because I'm going to be reading them if you want to read them with me. And tomorrow night, Amalia Young Karras will be with us. Please don't copy the show without written permission. Thanks, Pacho, for making this happen. Stay tuned for the Secret Teachings coming up with Ryan Gable. See you guys tomorrow night. Good night.
On this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.